What is up, everybody? It's Dr. Vibe, your host and producer of the award-winning Dr. Vibe Show. As always, I'd like to say you're blessed, highly favored, a magnet for miracles, and a solution for someone's problem. I am the host of Epic Conversations, and this is the place for epic conversations. And if you don't know, I love my Wednesday nights. There's an old song called "I Love the Rainy Nights." I love my Wednesday nights because I get Black Lady Magic. One half of Black Lady Magic is already in the building. The other half is on her way. And like to say, thanks for everyone for stopping by. Like to, as always, introduce Dr. Tachi. How we doing?
Oh, superlative, fantabulous. Couldn't be better.
There you go. That works, doesn't it?
Absolutely. And nobody wants to hear complaints. So
yeah. Who cares about that? And what I would like to do is I'd just like to shout everybody in the room: Stephen, Shannon, Jada Lopez, Free Pharrell, Bobby, Sandra, aka Ebony Princess, and Danny. Thank you so much for stopping by. And whoever's on Periscope, much thanks. And I'm also monitoring the YouTube channel. We're continuing our Black Lady Magic conversations. And tonight we're talking about the importance of culture. Very interesting Dr. Tachi is ready, and the hat, is outstanding. The ring,
thank you,
and the shirt. I actually have one of those shirts.
You do?
Yes, I do have one of those shirts.
This is actually from my line of T-shirts. So
there you go. Absolutely. So, Dr. Tachi, when I give you the word culture, what do you define as culture?
Oh, so this is really interesting. And we talk about culture all the time. And this was something I loved to talk about with students when I was teaching like basic communication. So culture is really a group of people who share something in common. It could be language, it could be religion, it could be customs and mores and ways of doing things. So it could be, it doesn't have to be ethnicity, but it can be ethnicity. So basically, it's a group of people that share something in common. It could be any number of things. And it doesn't have to just be, when we say culture, it doesn't just have to be country related or ethnicity related, as I was saying. That could be biker culture. You could, a bunch of people that ride motorcycles together. There's a particular way of doing things that they do it, and everybody shares. That's another important thing about culture, that culture is shared, and culture is also passed down from generation to generation. So those are some of the defining characteristics of what culture is.
Excellent. Let me revert back to when you were a younger Tachi. How important was culture in your environment when you were growing up?
Do you not know that I'm a Nigerian?
I know that.
Okay. Culture is very important in Nigerian culture. I'm telling you. You cannot, here's the thing, and I'm sure this is the same for many cultures around the world. Let me speak for what I know, Nigerian culture, but more specifically Igbo culture. Igbos, that's one of the three major ethnic groups in Nigeria, even though there are several. The three major are Igbo, Yoruba, and Hausa. Most people know Yoruba because of, especially Spanish people. If you know Candomblé, Santeria, and all of that, it comes from the Yoruba religion, which is Nigerian. So a lot of people will know Yoruba, but I'm from one of the major three groups. And so Igbos are very proud of being Igbo. So everything is culture, from the fact that my first language, even though I like to think I speak the Queen's English impeccably, my first language was actually Igbo. So while I was learning English and Igbo at the same time, but I used to be very strong in Igbo. So just the fact that there's a language that I was indoctrinated into, a way of doing things. Also, when we talk about high context versus low context, so high context cultures, and I think I've said this before, everything is, in low context cultures, everything is explicit, explained, and it doesn't exist if there's no contract. In high context cultures, meaning is implied. And so just by you being a member of the culture and watching and listening, you're supposed to understand what's done. That is entirely was my upbringing. why am I asking questions? Basically, my parents would look at you should just know. So that was a very cultural thing. So I tried to ask very little, unless I was at school where I knew I could get away with it in a low context culture. But at home, I just sat and watched because I knew that was a cultural thing. So the answer to your question is culture is critically important. For me, it was.
Excellent. And we have Encyclopedia Brown, Leah World Traveler, Leah Miller.
Sorry.
No, it's okay. It's okay. So good to see you. I know you've had a very long day. And okay. Where did you get those earrings?
Well, first of all, since we're talking about culture, I thought I was going to bring y'all a little culture tonight. That's why I decided to come up in here tonight, even though I'm tired. So let me first start with this.
Okay.
Oh.
Okay.
Wow.
I have the other side, but I can't mess with my Fitbit. So anyway, so red, the black, and the green.
The green, yes.
So now these, my amazingness right here.
Wow.
Oh, wow.
Wow. Where'd you get those?
So
you think
right?
You think you're gonna be? You won this week.
Oh, I know.
Next week
it's about to be a competition, and what already done been placed. So I got earrings on the way from your amazing person who sponsored those.
Awesome. Awesome.
Yeah.
See, there is power in my name.
I'm glad. They put respect on your name, Tachi. I think she made a lot of sales. We gonna get popping ass earrings.
See, there we go.
These
wow.
I bought from, and actually I'm writing an article about it. So you'll see a couple of articles coming out probably in the next couple of weeks. 2 weeks ago in DC, one of my our sorors, my line sister, is the creator of this amazing shop in the DC area called Nubian Human. And her store was actually recently featured in Forbes.
What?
So let me just talk about how she is popping for real. Since I guess 2013. So she's been doing it for about 6 years. She has a storefront. She's about to expand to open up a second brick and mortar shop in Baltimore. But in addition, Nubian Human. Somebody drop a link to it. If not, I'll drop one in there in a little bit.
I'm looking that up right now.
Yeah, and once I have the links to my articles, because I'm doing one that's featuring her and then one that's featuring what I'm about to tell you, I will share those in a future chat. So in addition to her Nubian Human store, she also created this event called the Black Love Experience. And basically the Black Love Experience every year brings together people who are about Black culture, for Black culture, live in Black culture, exude Black culture, support Black culture, which includes supporting Black vendors, Black small business owners, Black entrepreneurs. It is curated by Black speakers. They have sort of like a health and wellness section where they have people doing Reiki and massage and essential oils and readings and tarot cards and spiritualists and healers, all Black. They also bring in musicians, artists, local and somewhat, known on a greater scale. For instance, this year they had a Grammy-winning jazz artist who was performing. They have DJs, all Black. They have vendors, all Black. Because it's basically promoting and loving ourselves for who we are and promoting Black excellence and everything else. So said all that to say these beautiful, amazing wonderfulness that I'm wearing on my ears were from one of the vendors at the event who I saw. And I immediately was, as an earrings nista, as Tachi and I are, I basically immediately gravitated to her table first. And I was like, I'm going to buy a rack of those. I'm going to be 5 of them and 3 of those. And this I had to buy because, look at them. And so I bought this and a few other pairs of earrings, which I will roll out in the future. Our Black lady.
You got to roll them out slowly. I get you.
Slowly. I got to parsing. So this vendor, her name is Halls of Art. That's what she goes by. She designs these and then she has them made. And so I just bought these. And since I figured, thank you for reminding me of the topic. I kind of remembered, but wasn't 100% sure. When you confirmed that it was, in fact, about culture, of course, I went to Black culture immediately. I was like, I got to rep. So I wore these earrings, and Halls of Art will be one of the vendors that I am featuring in one of my articles. So one article will be about my girl. Her name is Anika Hobbs. She's the owner of Nubian Human and the curator of the Black Love Experience, which usually takes place every March or early April in the DC area. In Southeast, that's another thing that I should mention, specifically in an area that is still what we used to know DC as, Chocolate City. It's probably one of the least gentrified areas, though near Eastern Market, it's very gentrified. But
right.
The rest of it is still very traditional in terms of it being a predominantly African-American community. So she intentionally chose to have the event in Southeast DC, specifically in an area called Anacostia. And she worked with like local, community institutions, community organizations as the venue. So it's an amazing event, and you'll learn more about it in my article that I'm writing to feature her. And then a secondary piece that I'm writing to feature 5 vendors who participated, all of whom are selling different products.
Okay.
So
before we go any further, Divine Right on YouTube is saying this. Now I'm winning the earring game next week. And she says,
no, ma'am. No, ma'am.
And then she says, Leah, you may get jacked the next time I see you for some earrings.
Maybe my collection is getting kind of nice. I'm going to have to keep that under wrap.
Wow.
I'm going to have to lock that down.
Wow.
That is good stuff. Well, I also want to welcome.
So I'm going to turn them this way the whole time. I'm going to be doing this periodically, so don't be surprised. When I'm making a point, I'm going to highlight my point by doing this. I'm going to underscore it.
Okay.
So, yeah.
All right. Also want to welcome C. Will, also Kinte, and also J Mog. Long time no see, J Mog. Hope you're doing good. So Leah, when I say the word culture, what does it mean to you? Dr. Tachi just finished up before you came in and just hijacked with your culture. What is
Sorry.
No, it's all right. What does culture mean to you? And we also want to showcase and highlight great Black people are doing great things. And if you're watching live right now on Get Vocal, I've put the link for the store, and also the link that the store was featured in Forbes also.
Oh, yes. Thank you. About Nubian Human.
Yep.
I don't know. I mean, immediately, because we typically cover Black themes and, African diaspora type topics on Black Lady Magic, immediately that's where my mind went to when I think of Black culture. I mean, obviously, to me, culture is broader than that. It's basically the way in which I identify myself is always through a cultural frame. A lot of people stick to race or gender or whatever, but I kind of feel like I'm more rooted in culture. And for me, not only having an international lifestyle most of the time and being of mixed cultural backgrounds and mixed cultural heritage, for me, culture is also about identity and how I identify myself, where I feel I come from, how I identify my origins. And it's not necessarily something that is tangible. It's also a feeling. It's also a place. It's people, faces. It's food. It's music. It's tradition. So to me, people always talk about hip hop culture or, XYZ culture. And I just think there's so many facets to culture that it's hard to kind of define it. But for me, it's what I've said. I kind of feel like culture is who I am, and it goes beyond race. Because, for instance, I'll use the example of hip hop culture. Like I said, I think it definitely has African American and African origins. We are the originators of pretty much everything. I mean, let's just be honest. But speaking about hip hop culture specifically, we are the originators of that too. But I feel like when I think of hip hop culture, it's broader than just Black hip hop culture. It's more than that. So to me, it's, I guess I'll just leave it there.
Okay. Before we go any further, there's questions already coming up. I think it's probably identity that Sandra's saying, not identify, but there are a lot of people in the room. You are more than welcome to hop in. So please hop in, add commentary, give your conversation points, questions. I'm more than happy to drop out and let all 4 people go, like I think happened a few weeks ago. No problem. Leah, let me ask, and I asked Dr. Tachi this, because you are of mixed background, how did culture play a significant part in your life growing up?
I think for me, we've talked a little bit about this before. that because I'm of mixed heritage, I just, you know,
I hear you.
I told you it's always gonna happen. And I am a mixed cultural heritage, and I always claim that. I identify myself as a Black woman because that is how society perceives me, and so that's who I am. Even though I grew up in an all-white, homogeneously white environment, including my family, so I really was only exposed to that side of my culture. And even going a step further, my biological father is not actually American. So even though I identify as an African American woman, that's not my actual ethnic heritage. But culturally, yeah, I'm Black. I'm blackity Black. I'm fully Black. So, but as a youngster growing up in the absence of those cultural icons, markers, people, I kind of had to seek it out for myself and sort of create my own culture. So obviously, I mean, I had music and I had TV, but I mean, all my closest friends in high school were all white because I was the only mixed race person and the only Black person at my high school. So, my closest friends from high school are all Caucasian. So I kind of, I don't know why I'm like this, but I've always been this way. I'm just a warm, open person. So I make friends easily. So I played like every sport you can think of. I was in the marching band. I was in student government. I did pretty much everything, which I'm sure you're not surprised by. But through those activities, I made friends with kids in the other schools, like on the opposing teams. Like in the middle of a soccer game, I would be like chit-chatting with the person who was my, defender, or if I was on offense, when the action wasn't in our side of the field, and we would keep in touch. So I moved to the capital area of New York State when I was going into middle school, like the 7th grade. And I immediately started making friends that were not at my school. And those friends were also biracial or Black or Latino. And so I kind of created my own culture, and I sought it out, even if I didn't realize, maybe on a subconscious level. And I just found it for myself. And my parents, my white parents, understood that they could not give me those things because there's not their culture. They could try and they could create opportunities for me, but it's not something that they could inherently teach because they don't know it. And they knew what they didn't know. They knew their own limitations. And I always give them credit for that. And I appreciate them for that because they were okay with my exploration and they supported me. So, in the summers, they used to have this thing in Albany called the Black Festival. Mm-hmm. And it was basically a celebration of African-American heritage, culture, music, food, arts. And it didn't just stop at African-Americans. It also had Caribbean culture, Africans living in America, or African descendants, like Tachi, for instance, someone like her who is African, born of African parents, but she's American. A lot of those like subcultures were also present. And I would look forward to going to that every summer because I finally was like, I can just be normal. I don't stick out anymore. I do, but I don't.
Right.
And so I kind of like being able to be anonymous for that one day, that one time when sort of the beauty of Black culture kind of took over the capital area for those few days. And I would go with my friends, not from my home high school, but the friends I had made at the other high schools who were also Black and mixed race, Latino, Asian, whatever. And so that's sort of how I dealt with it as a youngster. And then in college and to now, I've just been more intentional about it. So as I've said in other talks, one of my majors in college was African-American studies. Why? Because it wasn't taught to me. My parents taught me what they could, but they were also only taught what was taught to them, which is the same stuff. It's only a small fraction of Black contribution to the United States specifically, but globally as well. So, I mean, it goes from slavery to Civil War to Martin Luther King to now.
All right.
Without a lot of the nuances in between. So my parents gave me that, but I needed more than that. And so I educated myself. And so that's what I continue to do. I will always be a learner and I will always be a lifelong student. That's just who I am. And so I feel like I didn't want my children to have the same kind of questions that I had as a child growing up. So to the extent that I can fill those gaps for them and that knowledge deficit, that's what I'm trying to do. There will always be questions because I still have a hole in my own background. I don't know my biological father very well. And because he's not American, I don't have all of the pieces of that puzzle. I mean, even though obviously all the boats came from the same source, they just went in different directions. I mean, I can go back that far, but there's differences. So I know I've said a lot, but that's what I've done.
That's wonderful. Just gives me time to hail up Big Bad Brad, also Patricia and Sandra. Sandra, you're asking great questions. You know what would make them better if you came on and asked them, but I will ask the first one. Actually, also on YouTube, we have U4Sight. We also have Black Ambassadors. Black Ambassador saying, finally, a panel taking a deep analysis of our situation. Finally, hello.
Black Ambassadors.
Yeah.
I want to know more about this group.
I know.
Yeah.
For a variety of reasons.
Yes, absolutely. Divine Right saying, I remember the day I met Leah. We were in the Student African American Society office at Syracuse. She was on a mission to continue learning more about the culture.
I was. You know what's so crazy? I have to tell you a story about that. And her saying that reminded me, I actually was in the first meeting and I remember asking if I could be there because I was biracial. Yeah. Like if it was allowed for me because I wasn't 100% real. So, you know, I was like half oppressor and half oppressed. So, you know, could I be in the room? Wow. And they're like, absolutely. Because I was like, I even brought up, I was like, I know about the 1 drop rule. So, but they're like, no, girl, you fine. You can be here.
Wow.
So dumb little freshman asking questions.
Oh,
I didn't know.
No, it's like,
and I mean, I had heard that they were super militant and all this stuff. So I figured if they were militant, then they would see me as like a spy or something, like an insider. I don't know. But I was like, no, I don't think so.
Wonderful.
But I was very active with them my entire college career.
All right. Good stuff. Now I'll get to the first question from Miss Sandra. If I can find it here. Oh, she asked, can identity transcend race?
Yes, it can.
Go ahead, Tachi.
Yes, it can. But as soon as I saw that, you know who I thought about. She calls herself Nkechi Diallo now, but her government name is Rachel Dolezal. So I thought about that. And, you know, it's actually, I think the individual determines that. I don't think we could say, regardless of how we feel about somebody like her, I don't think we can really determine that she does not identify as that. We can say it all day long, but what if she really does? We're not her, so we can't really determine that. I think it's an individual feeling. I think it's an individual decision as to how you identify. So absolutely, your identity can transcend race. Absolutely.
Leah, anything you want to add to that?
No, Tachi covered it.
Okay.
Because I'm afraid if we stay there and we start going back to the examples she gave, and I don't want to talk about that today.
Okay. So. All right. Okay. Next question that Sandra has: Can culture limit our development? Don't know if
Leah.
I mean, I think it can. I think it can if you allow yourself to be stunted by a perception that you think you need to fulfill and not allowing your perspective to be influenced by other things. Because I also feel like culture is not something that's malleable. It changes all the time. You know, culture has some things that are foundational to it, like I said before, using hip hop culture as an example, obviously it's based in urban life, the experiences of those young youth who kind of started having to find an alternative to potentially being caught up in gangs or crime or whatever, or they had like this musical inclination, or they were poets, but they couldn't find the right art form for them, or they were not accepted in traditional circles. So, I mean, it came out of this sort of oppression and this need to create their own identity. But I also feel like as time went on, it morphed beyond just sort of being about rap and lyricism. It became more about fashion, sort of the dialect, the way in which we speak to each other. It became about Black power and Black pride. It became about the food we eat. It became about dancing. I mean, dancing was from the beginning, like breaking and all that stuff, being able to express yourself through physical movement. And it keeps morphing and changing, and it continues to change. So even though I think the origins of hip hop culture come from Black urban youth in the Bronx, it's changed. It's not, you know, when I think of hip hop culture now, it isn't what comes to mind when I think of where it came from. So to me, I do think that your identity can transcend culture, because culture is always changing, as are we as human beings. I kind of feel sad for someone who doesn't continue to grow and change throughout their lives, because we are constantly growing and developing. We're exposed to different things, different people, different ideas. And I feel like over the course of your lifetime, you shouldn't be the same person at the end of your life that you were at the beginning of it. Maybe fundamentally at your core, you'll have some base values that make you who you truly are, and some things that will never change. But I kind of feel like if you cannot change, then I sort of feel sorry for you, because I think you'll be stuck.
Anything you want to add to that, Dr. Tachi?
Just to, in terms of what you were talking about, in terms of the culture, absolutely. Hip hop culture of today is not the same of hip hop culture of the 1970s/80s and 90s, when it was like the New York hip hop was at its height. I grew up on New York hip hop, so that I'm very, in fact, I used to do a lot of research on hip hop, so I'm very connected to it. One thing though, even though it grows and it changes, sometimes the growth and the change of the culture does not allow so in this case, hip hop culture has been allowed to grow and to manifest itself in different ways, sometimes to the detriment of hip hop, because now you have people who think that hip hop started with Lil Wayne and don't give credit to the originators and the struggle that it came out of and the fun times that it came out of. And in order to go anywhere, you have to acknowledge and understand your past. So this, to me, is why a lot of hip hop is disconnected, because it doesn't pay homage to what came before it. Now, I'm not saying dwell on it, but I'm saying use that in perspective, or keep that in perspective when you create, so that you build upon what the originators put, because that gives them credit and that also makes you better. So that's just what I wanted to say about that. But in terms of thank you, Soror. But in terms of the of culture and stagnating you, yes, I absolutely think it can. I think culture is a great foundation, but sometimes that foundation stagnates growth. I'll give a quick example. So in 2007, my father passed away, but he lived in Nigeria. In fact, he moved back to Nigeria when I was very small. And so he, for all intents and purposes, I only ever knew him living in Nigeria. And so when he passed away, when you pass away in Igbo culture, it's a whole pomp and circumstance, song and dance. And what happens is that sometimes doesn't gel with things. So we're all living here. And I'm like, look, people, I need to know when this is happening, because I'm working. So I can't just for months and months be gone, And so because they're like, well, we have to do this, and then we have to go and inform the village, and then we have to do, and so it was like a whole thing. So the cultural part is nice, but it stagnates growth because you insist on doing it this way all the time, regardless of whatever else is happening and whether or not it works within this context. So in the early Igbo days, maybe that worked. But in 2007, that's not something that can work for everyone. So in that case, it was something definitely that stagnated growth. And there are other examples away from funerals and stuff where you find that.
Excellent. Excellent. Let me just catch up here because there's comments flying all over the place. C. Will says, to be honest, it also became about the drug trade. I think he's talking about hip hop. Leah said, I guess it did lyrically, and I don't like the direction it's taking now. Stephen quotes Muhammad Ali saying, if you're the same person at 50 that you were at 20, you wasted 30 years. And also we have to say a shout out to welcome Angela. And also another great quote from Stephen, a better example of cultural rigidity. All right. Yes. And then on it's going back and forth here. We got things going on YouTube. Divine Right says, no way you were a spy, LOL.
Yeah, I mean, I can't pass, so I'm like, I don't know what I was thinking. So
Black Ambassadors, yes, thanks for having me. Thanks for being part of the conversation. I'm following you on Twitter, by the way. And also, you foresight for you too. Personal identity and cultural identity are two different things. If you don't know who you are, there is someone it is too willing to come along and stick a label on you that describes you. Turn yourself on your own personal and spiritual identity first. Those are the first things that people try to take away from you. and replace it with their own interpretation. Cultural ambassador saying culture is the mechanism which propels all areas of human activity. Hello, like that. And they give a quote here: environment creates culture and culture creates worldview. Quote from Dr. Marimba Annie. So there you go. So we're up to date. And I'm surprised no one's jumping in here, but that's okay. Someone will jump in on the Get Vocal platform.
Yeah.
Let me ask, how much of your culture that you both were raised with, little, none, a lot, do you still carry with you today?
You want to go or you want me to go?
Go ahead. I jump in afterwards.
I am unapologetically Nigerian. Anybody who doesn't know that, you don't pay attention to me. I am very, very Nigerian. That is not a contradiction with whatever other heritages I may have. Again, I was born in the US, so obviously I'm American by birth. I am a member of so many different types of social groups that by default, I feel like I fall, not that I'm necessarily a member of that group, but I try to understand and I try to absorb and I try to experience things, because you can't always experience things as yourself. You want to be able to have that empathy and that understanding. So I try to do that as well. But I am very Nigerian and don't care who knows, don't care who doesn't like it. Too damn bad for you. I'm proud of being such. And and how dare I not be proud? Because there are so many other people of African descent who have no clue where they're from. And I can tell you the exact village where my parents are, my village is where my parents are from. Though I still want to do something like take the DNA test, because I suspect we're from someplace else in Africa. So I want to know that. And we migrated to where we are. But because I keep getting Ethiopia from Ethiopians. So I'm like, okay, I need to find this out because I keep hearing this over and over and over. So I want to find that out.
I get that too.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. And there are all sorts of different ethnic groups in Ethiopia. So, though we look different, we could both be Ethiopian. So I'm interested to know that, but I consider myself very blessed that I can pinpoint exactly where I'm from. That is something that's a great foundation, because that means that that's something that nobody can ever take away from me. I have that pride. And again, it's a great foundation. And if you don't have that, that's okay. I think you should be proud. One thing about, for example, Jewish people, if anybody is Jewish, my sister lives in a very Jewish neighborhood in New York City. And so one thing about Jewish people is that wherever they live becomes their home. And their identity is that. So I think even if you don't know exactly where you're from, you create that culture. Create it and become a part of it. Don't lament that. Know where you're from, find out where you're from, but don't lament that you may not know exactly, because the culture you have is also wonderful.
Well, welcome. We got C. Will in the house. What is up, C. Will?
Hey, Dr. Vibe, how y'all doing?
Outstanding and blessed. How about yourself?
Awesome, doing great.
What do you have to share?
Well, I decided to jump in because you kept inviting, and
I want.
You're welcome.
It's not about me or the ladies, it's about all of us.
Yeah, and I'm really passionate about the idea of identity, and culture plays a big role in that. And I was listening to Leah's story, and I can relate to. And I think most people can, basically once you get around adolescence, you start searching for as an identity, right? What can I identify with? Who am I? Where do I come from? Type of questions, beyond what, like you said, what your parents told you or what they're teaching you in school, So, and I think it does have a powerful effect. And I really, really agree with the guy from YouTube who was talking about, your personal and sort of spiritual identity that you need to seek. You know what I'm saying? And identify with first, because I think if you get too attached to a cultural identity, you know, that's already there, that's kind of built in, and you can't define yourself, you know, and you start to say, okay, I'm a young black man. That means I'm scared and angry, and I'm a drug dealer or something, right? You know, so it's like there are cultural things out there that aren't necessarily always for your empowerment, you know, and so you want to make sure you identify with things, with yourself first, right, and then you can pick from the culture what is empowering. And I think you know, because you asked the question, or someone asked the question earlier about can cultural identification limit your development, and you know, I just wanted to kind of jump in on that note. You know, I mean, I'm with everyone. I think Black culture is great, but you know, any culture has positive and negative aspects to it. You know, and if you're not careful, you can identify with negative aspects of it. You know, and limit yourself in that way. You know, so I think you just got to be strong in yourself first, and continue to develop that you know, self identity, and then enjoy whatever culture you happen to be partaking in as well.
Excellent. Question here for Leo from Steven. Steven's asking, Leo, what behavioral shifts did you make as you began to embrace your cultural identity? And maybe the other people that are in the squares right now, maybe you can give some examples of what shifts you made to embrace your cultural identity. I know let Leah start first.
Sure. I mean, I kind of think, and I've said this before, but I haven't said it today, so I'll say it again, that even though I am mixed race, and I do consider myself a Black woman first and foremost, because that is, again, how society perceives me, and so that's who I am. I think fundamentally I'm the same wherever I go, because I can only be me. So I speak the same way to my family that I speak to my friends who are friends of color. So I don't know that behaviorally I changed that much. I think what I did do is I just grew and I expanded a little bit. Because I mean, I was the kid in high school, and I think most of people from my generation, I was listening to, you know, 90s R&B, New Jack Swing music, but I was also listening to Nirvana. And I knew every word of every song on their albums. So I kind of, you know, I have a very broad musical lexicon because I love all music. But I definitely am like Tachi. Now, I'm not a scholar of hip hop in terms of actually doing research, but I do consider myself a hip hop and R&B scholar of the 80s and 90s, because I mean, that's the origin. So you always got to go back to the source, right? Especially when you see the trash that's coming out today. But anyway, see how far we've fallen. But anyway, I feel like behaviorally, I'm pretty much the same. My friendship circle is like, you know, the United Nations. I literally have friends, probably at least one in every country, people from all different socioeconomic status, people from different walks of life, from people who come from shoe shine boys to people who have been ex-ministers or ex-presidents of different countries. And I'm always the same. I'm always just me. And so I can say, like Tachi, she's, you know, unapologetically Nigerian. I'm also an unapologetically Black woman. And I'm proud of my culture. I'm proud of who I am. I'm proud of where I come from. But I will also always tell people that I'm biracial, because I am. And I refuse to negate any part of who I am, because it's all of those things that made me who I am. So, you know, I'm going to give homage and pay honor and be true to those origins. But like I said, in terms of behavior, I can't say that I've changed like behaviorally, but I can say that I was much more of a seeker of opportunities to take in and digest and expose myself to all things that I felt were Black and Black cultural, you know, opportunities, because those are things that were just not available in my immediate environment. And those were things that were not available where I grew up, or in my school, or, you know, even in my family. So I would say behaviorally, the one thing that did change for me is that I just became more receptive and more open to exploring other cultures. Like, I grew up in a white Presbyterian church. I'm Presbyterian by upbringing, but in college, because I sing, I was in the gospel choir at my university. Wow. And had the opportunity to see Black church. So, you know, for my first experience, you know, I was seeing, you know, Baptist church and not Episcopalians, evangelicals and just, you know, seeing people catch the Spirit for the first time I'd ever seen it personally, and seeing people speaking in tongues, and just seeing different forms of worship. And it became more of a, I don't want to say like a curiosity, but it kind of was, because it was very foreign to me. I had never seen people worshiping this way. I'd only seen it in Black film, you know, like with the Woo Childs and the Praise Jesus and those kinds of stuff. And I'd only seen those things in film. And so for me to see these things for the first time, it was sort of entertaining for me, because I grew up in a very more sedate, quiet, there's no that kind of like verbal, you know, expressions of faith or the feelings that you get when you feel like the Spirit comes over you or whatever. It's not like that in white church. So at least not in my white church that I grew up in. So, I mean, that's all I can really say is behaviorally, all I did was just become more open, more receptive. And I actively sought out opportunities to learn about other parts of myself.
Wonderful. Anyone else want to add it? Did you have to make any behavioral shifts to embrace your cultural identity? I see some nodding. So before we go there, I'd just like to say shout out to Wayne, who's jumped in on Get Vocal. Welcome. So Will, I saw you nodding your head. Share.
Definitely. I know for me, when I, like I said, you're starting to come of age, and then you start getting, I got exposed to, you know, a lot of pro-Black culture and different things like that. I definitely changed my behavior, my identity, you know what I'm saying, who I hung around with. Just because, it was something I had to do anyway, because I was a military child, so we moved around a lot.
Oh.
And so my basic, you know, my root culture, I will call it, is just my family, you know what I'm saying? And then from there, you kind of have to adapt to whatever environment you're in quickly, you know, because you're the new kid in the school or whatever, you know what I'm saying? And so I always had multiple cultures, you know, in my head that I was, you know, expressing. You know, it was, like I said, you know, obviously I'm a Black person, but then, you know, we would go to a mixed race church that was usually predominantly white. And it was one of those churches, Leah, where, you know, everyone's getting the Spirit and speaking in tongues.
Yep.
And so that's just how I was raised, you know, and already being one of those churches, you know, be separate, come from among them and all this other stuff. You already see yourself as separate, right? But you also have to live in the world, right? So there's like a secular identity, you know, or a secular way of relating with the world, and the one that was bred within the church, you know. So that was already something I was used to doing. So once I, you know, started coming of age, you know, like I said, listening to hip hop, you know, listening to different pro-Black kind of identities, then it kind of splinters again. You know, I have the good church boy, you know, I have the regular, you know, kid that goes to school in suburbia, but then I run around in the city and hang out with, you know what I'm saying, you know, the pro-Black guys, you know what I'm saying? So in each of those places, you know, like Leah said, I'm still the same person, but I express differently. You know, it's like the idea of code switching, you know, and so you know, like if I'm going for a job application, you know, how are you doing, sir? If I see, you know, what's up? If I see my friend, hey, what up, bro? You know what I'm saying? It's just going to be a different expression. I'm still the same person, but yeah, it definitely evolves. And that's one of the things I came to the idea later in life when I got more mature about, you know, really being strong in yourself, because you can go too far down one road or another. You know, if you get caught up in the, you know, in the vibe of what everyone's doing, you know, oh, now I'm hanging out too late with the boys and I can't go to class, you know what I'm saying, the next day for school because I've been out all night, you know, doing whatever. So I think it does affect you, you know, just because, like I said, it's almost like mob mind. You get in the mind of, you know, whatever group you happen to be with, you know, it's going to rub off on you to some degree. So I think, you know, we need to be careful of that and also, you know, use it to our advantage as well.
It's been a little while since we've heard from Dr. Tachi. What do you have to share?
Oh, so I forgot. I'm just so into listening.
Yeah.
Because actually 80% of communication is listening. 20% is talking.
Yeah.
So most of us do it the other way around, but it is what it is. So in terms of, it's interesting, all these things that you were bringing up, both Leah and Sewell, about church and all of that. So if we're talking about the church thing, for example, I grew up like Leah in a very non-melanated community in upstate New York. And so it's even, I would say it's a similar experience to Leah. Not necessarily, yeah. In many instances, my sister and I were like the only. We went to Catholic school. It was a small Catholic school. You could count the melanated ones of us that went there on your hands, on your fingers. I think there were 5 in the entire school, and that was it. So in terms of church, that was what my parents were used to. So it's like it's recently now that you see more of the evangelical type of churches and Pentecostal things that came. But the ones who came to Africa to prep us for colonizing was the Church of England. So my father was Anglican and my mother was Methodist. So we were, you talk about white church, that is the whitest of the white churches. So
yeah, I thought Presbyterians were
bad. No, Anglican is like, what? However, in terms of adapting behaviors and stuff, what happens if you look at the Anglican church, like my dad's church, they do drums during the and dance. Okay, so that is not what the Anglican church does, but they do the regular Anglican service, and then during offering time, here comes the African. So you see that with many people that have been colonized, they adapt, even though they're maybe forced to or coerced to adopt the colonizers' ways, they still find ways to put their identity in it, and part of that is the drums, etc. I had to write things down so I did not forget. Also, another one of my indoctrinations, because of the fact that I grew up in upstate New York, and for the most part, I went to schools that were predominantly, even my undergraduate institution, the University of Buffalo, is a PWI, a predominantly white institution. But then I went to Howard University. That was a complete shift because, and I've said this before when we talked about colleges and experiences, I could stop being a Black student because they made you painfully aware at the University of Buffalo that that's what you were. And once I got to Chocolate City, once I got to Howard University, I was a student. I didn't have to apologize for Blackness, defend Blackness. I was the president of the NAACP at the University of Buffalo. That was the most tiring job ever. You were always fighting something. And I'm like, I just want to be. Can I just be? Why do I not have the luxury of just being? And so for the first time, even though you don't sit back on your laurels at Howard, I could just be. And when people are allowed to be, you see academics that just shoot up. You see it's wonderful. There's this sense of self that you get. So that was one thing in terms of not how I had to adjust, but how my behavior adjusted because of that. It was wonderful that I could just be an experience. I already had a sense of awareness as an African, but that was allowed to thrive and grow. And also because there are other Africans. And like growing up in upstate New York, you had some Africans there at the time we were, but they were there to go to school and they left. The difference with us is that my father was a professor at the university. And so it wasn't like, okay, once I graduate, we are leaving, that type of thing. That was, where we were. And so sort of like Leah, there's this kind of, I think where we lived was less diverse than where you were. You were in like outside Albany. Buffalo was not as diverse as that area. Yeah,
I feel like Buffalo's bigger than Albany.
It is.
Like a larger
it's the
city.
Second largest city outside of New York City. But it was, especially at the time, it was not very diverse. You had 2 groups, and that was about it. I didn't fit in with the one, so I was forced with the other to be with the other.
Yeah.
And so it's you feel, especially as an African child. So not only am I Black, but I'm also a foreigner. I've got a foreign sounding name. Nobody else is named Chetachi Egwu. It's clear that I'm not from there. To the point that when I was in high school, I was called down to a room, and I noticed my sister was there. I was like, hey, and everybody else there was Asian. So we took a test. Without telling us, they made us take an ESL test, English as a second language test. Because of our names, they assumed we didn't know how to speak English. When we got hundreds, they were like, let me guess. English is your first language and you were born in the US. Yes. And if you had bothered to ask me, whose English is better than your own, you would have found that out. So there was a lot of having to adjust to the stereotypes of who Africans were, how they behave, where we belonged. So even more than, with Leah, at least, you were in navigating two worlds, but so was I, because even though I was Black and it's not like I came from a biracial background, I'm also battling the fact that I'm also a foreigner.
There you go. And Stephen says, Tachi means how in Tibetan.
Oh, wow.
Okay, there you go. Cultural fact. Going on the YouTube side, you for sight for you too. Saying my cultural shift was the fact that I picked up my identity at the same time I saw other people hide their identity. I was proud, and I'm proud of being a Black man again. This is in my bio, and I make it. And to make a long story short, I am unafraid to be Black, and I'm afraid to be who I am, and will not hide it in verbiage or the way I carry myself. Divine Right is saying this conversation has me really wanting to get on my A game to pinpoint exactly where my father's side came from. There's Native American, Black, and people ask me if there's Caribbean roots in there. People ask me what island we are from, and if there's a Caribbean in me. I don't know. So Divine Right's going to have doing some homework, find out some more about her roots. Her roots. So, and we're not going to say it for too much longer because Leah has had a very long day, and so has Chetachi. But I will just say Leah wasn't even going to be coming on tonight, and you wouldn't think that she wasn't going to come on by the vibe and the energy she's rocking with tonight. So we always appreciate Encyclopedia Brown.
And the damn earrings.
Thank you. Well, it's not going to be Black Lady Magic if we're not both there. So, I mean, I can't let down the team.
There you go. So let me ask a final conversation piece of all three of you. How much do Black people need to work on their culture in 2019?
Who's first?
So I'll go first because I feel like you guys' answers are going to be more profound. So I would say
maybe Tachi.
I say we really do need to. That's one of the reasons I'm so interested in it or passionate about it is because we need to form our own culture, not let society form it for us. And by that I mean predominantly how can I say this? Influenced by other cultures that aren't ours. Oh yeah, just say it. By other, basically like white people who are like running the record industry or different media. I saw a post recently that said it was like a meme, and it said at first I couldn't get a role in Hollywood and they wouldn't cast Black people, so I decided when I do my own movie I'm going to cast predominantly Black people, and it showed some white people freaking out like, oh no, it was talking about Key Peele from Us, in different things like that, and they're like, oh, why are you?
God, I still want to talk about that movie, man. I'm sorry, I just want to say that we have to talk about it. We have to talk about it.
All right.
Yeah, but I know it's by a Black.
You got to see it.
Full of Black people, and it has a lot of messages in it. But I was just, speaking to the fact of, forming our own narrative, creating our own identity. I was part of a group in Boston called Redefining Our Community, because we didn't want to be just identified as a community where murders happen and they deal drugs. It's like, no, we have love, we have family, we have culture, we have, beauty and youth and joy and stuff like that. And so I think the main thing is, as far as my interest in culture, is to make sure that it is our culture. Right, not just little pieces that are glamorized for sales or advertising.
All right, who's up next?
Okay, well, I'm sorry.
I'll say something. Go ahead, Tachi.
No, because I need to be refreshed of the question.
In regards to what as we sit here in 2019, April 3rd, do Blacks need to work on culture?
You want to go, Leah, or you want me to?
Go ahead.
I think when you have a culture who still can't decide what they want to be called, yeah, we need to work on culture. We can't even get the nomenclature together. We still have issues within ourselves culturally. Afro-Caribbeans, Afro-Europeans, Afro-Brazilians, Afro-Africans, African-Americans. There are still problems amongst each other when we're in the same spaces and we may be vying for jobs or whatever the case is. So, yeah, we don't see ourselves as a collective, I don't think. In some cases we do, but in other cases we don't. So I think that we have a lot of work to do. And I think that also stems from not being clear on how we identify who we are, and also sometimes not knowing where you emanate from can do that as well. But we have all sorts of ways to find that out. And even if you don't know, just the fact by virtue that you are of African descent, that should be enough. But I'm not also negating the other parts of it. We're not a monolith. Black itself is not supposed to be a monolith. We're made up of all sorts of different cultures, etc. So I would say this: we still need to learn how to come together as one community, but then we need to learn how to respect and exist with our co-cultures. People use the word subculture. No, sub denotes below. So it's co-culture is the correct term. So we have a lot of co-cultures within Black culture. So we don't even know that. So yeah, we have a lot of work to do.
Okay. I was gonna ask you some conversation pieces, but I'm gonna keep it quiet because you've already created another conversation topic for Black Lady Manage. So I'm not magic. I'm not gonna go there, but I'm gonna put it down the road. But very interesting as always. Leah?
Yeah, I mean, I'm always open for another question. I mean, I think part of the reason why I bucked up my energy and came onto this call is because I always love talking about culture, period. I mean, that's sort of where I'm rooted as a person. I mean, and that's what I do in my day job is promoting American culture. And part of American culture is talking about the co-cultures within it. So, you know, I'm very much like, this is the essence of who I am as a professional in my day job. But anyway, I would say in terms of your question specifically related to Black culture, yes, I do think that there is work to do in a couple of areas. One is in cultural preservation. Like Dr. Tachi was saying earlier, even though, you know, Black culture is always growing and morphing and changing as it should, because we're all growing and morphing and changing as we adapt to our current environment and move toward the future, we cannot forget where we came from. And we have to pay homage to, you know, the origins, not only in hip hop culture, but in general. So I am really heartened to see something like the National African American Heritage Museum. Yeah. You know, and all of these new cultural monuments that have come up in the last few years, the anti-lynching memorial, things like that, all relevant to capturing the essence of certain dimensions or, you know, eras within our history. Because I really do believe the more things change, the more they stay the same. And if we also don't learn from our past, we are doomed to repeat it. I believe that. So I really do feel like part of avoiding the pitfalls and the mistakes of the past is to learn from them. And to learn from them, we need to preserve that history and preserve that memory. So I do think one of the areas where we need to work as a culture is to do that preservation. Record those oral histories, because, you know, part of the African diaspora culture that has been passed to us as African Americans is the oral tradition. That's why we are such lyricists and poets and rappers, because we tell our stories orally. And our elders still have memories that are not written down. We don't have documentation for them, but we need those memories, because as soon as they die, so too goes our history. And like Tachi was saying earlier, I don't want anybody thinking that hip hop started with Lil Wayne. Not to take anything away from him. I'm a fan. I like his music, but it definitely didn't start with him. And he even says as much. But I just feel like we have work to do in that sense. The other thing that I do think that we need to do as a culture is hearkening a little bit back to what C. Will said about we need to create more Black opportunities for Black people by Black people, because doors are still closed in our faces. Opportunities are still just outside of our reach. They like to dangle words like, oh, well, we're a post-racial society and everyone has the same opportunities and you can do these things. We don't need affirmative action. Well, that means they're not going to change. And in fact, they're going to try to even further strip away what few things they put into place to try to level the playing field. So I'm not going to sit around and wait for some other group to make a way for my group when that's not necessarily in their interests. And frankly, it probably goes against their interests because it means that they will be usurped from positions of power that they have held forever, because we've talked about this before. You give us an opportunity, we take it to the top. We are not mediocre people. And we are built to overcome adversity. So if you give us one little small opportunity, it's over for you. They know this, so they're not going to give these opportunities to us. So in my long-winded way, because I'm tired, we need to create our own opportunities. So I have to say this too. I am really more sad than I thought I would be about Nipsey Hussle's murder, because he is someone who was more than a musical artist. He was actually a change agent in his community, and he was reinvesting back in his community, and he was creating opportunities in his community, both within the music industry, but also as an entrepreneur, creating employment, providing educational opportunities, giving scholarships. I believe that there is so much power and opportunity already within our community. If we could only find a way to harness that and find a way in which to reinvest that into our own community, I feel like the sky would be the limit for us, and we would not have to rely on larger society to provide these opportunities or to give reparations that are never going to come. So I think those are the two areas where I think we can do some specific work.
Drop the mic. Encyclopedia Brown had just laid down the foundation as always, and she's tired. I don't believe it yourself.
Very tired. And I met the First Lady of Armenia today.
Oh, wow.
Oh, how cool.
So my brain was fried from that because I was so excited that she answered my question.
All right.
Oh, wow.
In her little Q&A. We can talk offline now about that.
All right. Well,
Yes.
We're going to end it there. We're going to say thank you to everybody who watched live. So I'm going to do roll call. Shannon, Sandra, Kinte, Free Pharrell. I saw your question on the side, Free Pharrell. If we start that conversation, we're going to be going for an hour. So I'm parking lotting that for another conversation. So please don't worry about that. Don't worry. I'm not forgetting you. Also, Jada Lopez, Stephen. Thank you, Stephen. Some good stuff here. Stephen saying we never left the tribal system. We changed the verbiage.
Exactly.
Very, 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 very good point. Also, some final comments on YouTube. Divine Right saying my great-grandmother would switch back and forth. She was part white and could pass for white. And when she needed a job, she checked the white box. When she went home to Queens, she was now black. Also, agree.
That's a whole other conversation.
Yes.
Too, from the past, like passing, not passing.
Yes.
Things like that.
Agreed on the oral history. My Nana is 94, and there's still things about our family history and culture I'm still learning from her, and it's not written down, and she's the matriarch. Harrison, Family Logs. I know who that is. Mr. Harrison, watching from your bed. You missed it. Don't worry. There's something called replay. And Black Ambassador says we need a total reconstruction of our cultures. Get in touch with our past, present, and future. A great culture will propel Africans all into a new century of revolutionary power. Hotep family. So there we go. So I'd like to say thank you to those people on YouTube, Divine Right, Black Ambassadors, and Divine, and U4. I can't remember. I always remember his name. U4Sight for you too. On the Periscope side, NU_MTV. Natalie Crew. Sorry, not True Crew. She said to you, Tachi, you look amazing today as usual.
Oh, thank you.
Beautiful, beautiful.
And she also said many elements of hip hop culture can be found in cultural expressions elsewhere, i.e. emceeing and the oral tradition of Tassou in Senegal. Mm-hmm. So much work to be done in terms of connecting the dots, especially in that realm and across the country, cultures along the spectrum of Blackness globally. So that is it. We are done another epic conversation. If I missed you, it was because of my head, not my heart. Before we let you all go, Will, how can people touch base with you?
You can get in touch with me at cwillinspire.com and I was trying to check to see if my social links are on there, and they're not. I need to update that. But anyway, yeah, you can definitely contact me on the contact form there. And you can find me on Will Inspire on Facebook, my Facebook page, and Will Inspire on Instagram.
Dr. Tachi?
So I am the host of Mediascope, which happens every Wednesday night at 6 p.m. Eastern Time on Periscope for now, Facebook Live, and also WJMSradio.com. And that's 6 p.m. Eastern Time and 3 p.m. Pacific. I also, on Tuesdays, host a show with my good friend Kevin out in LA. It's a podcast called TV Channeling, where we talk about TV. We do TV reviews, talk about television, film, and entertainment news. And that is on every major podcasting app like Google Play, Spotify, etc. And Tuesdays at 5 p.m. on WJMSradio.com. So that's how you can reach actually, and I'll put my stuff in the chat.
Okay, I'm going to keep it short and sweet because I could go on forever with some of the things I'm doing, but I can't keep up to Leah. The best way to just get a hold of me is just go to my website, drvibeshow.com, the Dr. Vibe Show. You'll get all my contact information, all the places you can hear the epic conversations, watch the epic conversations, but I will tell you what's coming up in the next few days. Tomorrow night at 7 p.m. on this platform, Serena Wills, who was on YouTube, is going to be doing part 2 of Taking Care of Our Elders. Very important conversation. Then on 9 o'clock on Get Vocal, I'll be hosting for the Eminem Explores conversations that's being hosted by Men and Masculinity. We're doing the topic. They have a gentleman, Owen Williams, coming on saying, in order to be a good father, you need to be a good husband. Then Friday night, 10 p.m. Eastern Time, I have a lady named Katura Kendrick, who's going to be live from Shanghai, China on Get Vocal. And she's going to be talking about the importance of building your own voice. And on Monday evening at 8 p.m., someone that myself and Dr. Tachi know very well, Jamie Bowles, who is the CEO of WJMS Radio, will be talking about her battle overcoming lung cancer. And she's just in her early 30s. And she also has her own online station, as Dr. Tachi mentioned, WJMS Radio. And then a week from tonight, we got the sorors on. We got Tachi, Leah, and Serena. Yes, you're going to see Serena on this platform. They're going to be having a sorority talk. So that is going to be epic. Yeah, that's going to be crazy.
They ain't ready.
Yes, Dinte, that is a Get Vocal shirt. It is, very much so.
I noticed that as well. I just wasn't going to say anything, but I saw it.
Okay, well.
He dangles it in front of us, mocking us.
He does. He teases.
I can't wear earrings, so I've got to do something to keep up.
Okay, fair enough.
That's a good point.
And I think that Leah and Dr. Tachi should start their own earring line. But
I think that is a wonderful idea.
I'm down for it.
I agree.
Yes, because I think both wear it well. You got creativity, and you seem to have a fan club already tonight with your earrings. So
I do. I kind of think we need to really talk about this offline.
Let's talk about it offline for real.
Earring game. Yeah.
So what I'm going to do is close out like I usually do. A few things. Live your life as a dream. If you can dream it, you can make it. Next up, sometimes you have to get smaller to get stronger. Block assumptions. And I always have this last one that takes so long because I don't remember it. So just bear with me a second, folks. Come on, computer. Here we go. Give me a sec here. Sorry for the delay. I always have to say it. It's part of the branding. So I got to say it. There we go. Aim bigger, aim better, aim higher, aim wider. God bless. Peace be well. Keep the faith and walk good. Bye-bye.
Bye.